media commentator Nigel Pauley. Hello, Nige.
Afternoon, Kevin.
Yes, so the legendary, world-famous Sir Damon Buffini, currently Deputy Chair of the state broadcaster, he's under fire from the GMB union, which says that his private equity firm, Permira, when they bought out the AA, the Automobile Association, in 2004, it led to hundreds of job losses. So this union say that Sir Damon is a poster boy for the worst excesses of capitalism and should not be within a country mile of the non-profit state broadcaster. Meanwhile, Baroness Nicky Morgan fancies the job. George Osborne fancies the job. But then again, of course, George Osborne fancies all jobs. He's got so many of them, you can hardly count them. So there's a real kind of bun fight, a rat fight going on to get this job, to become chairman of the BBC, and the guy in the front-running position is controversial to say the least. Typical BBC is just not working out. Another fine mess they've gotten themselves into.
Yeah, I doubt whether the deputy will get the job. Currently, from June the 27th, there's going to be Dame Elan Closs Stephens, who is from Aberystwyth and speaks Welsh. But
she's the temporary one, though, right?
She's going to be temporary from June the 27th, when Sharp steps aside.
So Sharp is holding the fort right now, having had to resign because of this deal,
But, I mean, the BBC chair's always been controversial. Labour's Lucy Powell the other day was moaning about cronyism, British broadcasting cronies. But, you know, every government in power wants to have someone there who's sympathetic. The BBC is constantly accused of being biased by the side who's not in power. You know, Margaret Thatcher had Marmaduke Hussey, and Tony Blair had Gavin Davis, Christopher. Every one of them is normally connected to politics, but going back, they were connected to politics, but also had been to a top public school, Oxford, and ran banks. And that's the other thing. There tends to be businessmen. I mean, one of the other ones you didn't mention is Dame Sharon White, who was at John Lewis.
Oh, yeah, she is at John Lewis.
She's up there.
Yeah.
Trevor Phillips, I think, is unlikely. Sir Nicholas Sirota, great Blairite. Why Labour are manoeuvring is because the temporary person could be in charge for up to a year. And I would imagine that Labour will be trying to stall the appointment until there's a general election, because at the moment they're trying to make it difficult for the Conservatives to put a Conservative in, because as the way the polls are at the moment, it's likely that Labour will be in power at the next election. Therefore, they will be saddled with a Conservative favoured chairman. Now, when Marmaduke Hussey went in, Margaret Thatcher put him in, he got rid of the sort of left-leaning Alistair Milne and also clashed with John Burt, who were both New Labour sort of favourites. So there's a sort of... it shouldn't be political. It is. It shouldn't be full of... They used to always be lords, but not like peers. Yeah. These were actual peers of the realm. So me and you aren't going to get this job, Kevin. Ordinary people aren't.
Don't want it.
I
don't want it. But why, Nigel? Why? You know, the chairman, the job of the chairman. They're the chair of the BBC Trust, which is essentially the organisation that looks after the interests of licence fee payers. So they deal with complaints about the BBC. They deal with any queries that people have about the way the BBC works. If people complain about programmes, the Trust will look into it. So it represents the people against the organisation, if you see what I mean. Well, my question to you, Nigel, is why is it a couple of chairmans ago it was Michael Grade, who knows about broadcasting, but apart from that, I can't think of anyone they've ever given the job of chair of the BBC Trust to who knew a damn thing about television, radio or broadcasting. Why do they always give this job to rank amateurs, you know, who were bankers, who worked for Goldman Sachs, who know nothing about broadcasting?
Because it's sort of a bit of a smoke screen. And it is right, it is down to cronyism. And it is a nice little sinecure or job for one of your mates. Now, personally, you'd be thinking, who is really good at running things at the moment in television? Well, actually, we'd be struggling because ITV's got its problems. But, you know, looking at someone who has a track record, and we both would say Michael Grade was a good chairman. But the problem is, it goes beyond that. It goes into politics. When you say they basically chair the board, but they can also put pressure on the Director General, they can put pressure on programmes, they can voice opinions. They are basically the voice of the government in the BBC. They're meant to be the voice of the people, but they have been the voice of the establishment, if you like. So it's a strange scenario where the BBC always plays safe. It always looks to the old boys network or old girls. Well, it won't be possibly the old girls network, but unlikely. You know, so we don't get served. The last people they worry about is, as licence fee payers, me and you might want to think, let's get a hot shot, even an American, someone from Netflix, someone from Amazon, someone who knows what they're doing with making modern day television. But what we get is some old duffer who went to Oxford with someone or went to Winchester and comes in and sort of sits there in a non-smoke-filled room, making, you know, rubber stamping decisions. What they need is a dynamic leader. They need someone to push the BBC forward to face the challenges it has from streaming, from not having...
who understands broadcasting, which...
someone who understands broadcasting.
Richard Sharp's claim to fame was, I think it was Goldman Sachs, or was it Morgan Freeman?
Goldman Sachs, he worked with Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, so, you know, he was a banker. He was a city banker.
And the one
so what does he know about broadcasting? Nothing. Why does he get this job? 150 grand a year they get, by the way.
Because it's, as you say, it's a sinecure, it's a job for the boys. You know, there was Christopher Bland, I guess. He was short-lived. Sadly, he died. He came from London Weekend Television. He was probably one of the bravest ones they had, and the only other one who had any connection, but he was also a businessman. So, you know, the basic point is they look for people, bizarrely, this non-profit making organisation looks to businessmen rather than broadcasters.
Yeah, it's true. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre. But anyway, we wish Sir Damon Buffini, a legend in his own lunchtime, all the best with his bid to take over from Richard Sharp. Let's talk about the other channel, if you like, ITV. On Tuesday, Nigel, the Weird Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee begins its This Morning inquiry, where I believe the ITV Chief Executive, Dame Carolyn McCall, has been called to Parliament to explain what was going on in the This Morning office. Was there bullying going on? What was happening with Philip Schofield and so on and so forth? I assume Dame Carolyn won't be the only one who's called. Maybe they'll call Holly Willoughby and people like that. What on earth is Parliament doing investigating the poisonous atmosphere at the This Morning office?
I mean, as we've said many times, and we've both spoken about this more than... unless there is something huge that we haven't been told, I fail to see why Parliament is worrying about someone who had an affair with someone that's a bit unfortunate and didn't tell his colleague.
Exactly.
So therefore, John Nicholson was asking last week, it was when Martin Frizzell made the strange aubergine connection, which was, you know, I'd like to see him get called before the committee, actually, the head of This Morning. So they're sort of, it's smoke and mirrors. They're suggesting that we both know that is an horrendous place to work. We've worked in horrendous newspapers, Kevin, and newsrooms, and that is much more toxic and much more backstabbing than even newsrooms we've worked in. And some of them run exactly, a bowl of cherries. So it's a horrible place to work with horrible people.
Oh, it's a family, Nigel. It's a family. They keep telling us.
But it's a family. Sorry. Are you okay?
It's a deep breath.